All right, guys, I'm going to show you a little bit about how to troubleshoot the MiSTer if it's not booting. You'll notice, first of all, I've got the power coming in from a regular DC jack like this. I've got a splitter here, so the power goes in here. And then on this side, you've got two connections. It's a Y splitter from the power because you need to power both the MiSTer board, the main board, plus the hub. The bottom side is the hub, and the middle is the MiSTer board. So if you look at the connections here, you've got power in the middle. So this is where you're going to connect the power switch. And then this other wire goes into this port that's called power only. This powers the hub. If this is not connected, the hub will not work. So this is what powers the hub. So once you've got those connected, then when you flip the switch, if the SD card is seated correctly, you'll see quickly the lights, and the disk will start blinking because it's booting up, and then it's fully booted at this point. If you're not getting any lights, and it's not booting up, most likely the SD card, and if the fan is spinning, the SD card might be loose a little bit or not seated properly. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that real quick. And sometimes taking this SD card out can be a little bit challenging because the case, unfortunately, has two slots. There's a secondary SD card. This is supposed to be blank. There's nothing in here, and it's not really used by any cores, and you can't just use it for like your games or something. You always have to use your primary SD card, and this primary SD card, as you can see, it's kind of inside and it's hard to see, and it's very thin area to get to it. And sometimes people actually, when they put the SD card in, if you don't put it in correctly, it can even fall into the case. So let me show you how to take this SD card out, and if you have trouble, how to deal with it. So notice I've got a small screwdriver here that can be used. This is an X-Acto knife we could possibly use, and then this is a set of tweezers I have so that it can help me pull it out in case I have some challenges. So, but basically most of the time what you do is, this is spring-loaded, the SD card. You'll stick in a small device like this inside, and you'll press down on the card and then you let go, and most of the time this thing will pop out. But in this case, you can see it kind of got stuck in here because the edge is connected to here, and if you try to wedge it out, you're actually pushing it towards the upper side of the case here, and it's not going to necessarily come out. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. Like in this case, notice I was able to wedge it out and it came right out, and here it is, it's out. But let me assume that this was stuck a little bit, and I'm going to go push it back in a little bit so it gets now it's spring loaded back in. I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to spring load it out. But if this, for some reason, this is stuck underneath here, what you have to do is you're going to have to get something like an X-Acto knife or tweezers, and make sure you pull it towards this direction down while you take it out. So sometimes you have to use kind of two hands. So you'll have to use like this screwdriver here to wedge it, and then use the tweezer, like an X-Acto knife or something, to make sure you're pulling it towards the lower side. But you want to get in there like this and try to get it a little bit towards you, and then push up, and notice that it did come out again. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, but if you give it a shot a few times, you'll get it to work. But let's say it's a worst case scenario and you can't really get it out. It's not terribly difficult to open this thing up. Let me show you. Like, I'm going to put the SD card in wrong. Instead of pushing it into the slot, I'm going to actually angle it down a little bit so it'll fall into the case. So here goes. when I go to put it in, I don't have it quite right, and oops, see, it fell into the case. So now I can actually shake the case and see it fell in because I did not put it in correctly. So don't worry if that happens. These are pretty easy to take apart. So what you want to do is disconnect the power, obviously. I'm going to disconnect the power. There's 4 screws on the top. I'm going to take those off real quick just to show you how it works. Okay, that's number 1. Put these here. It's 1 screw. 2 screws. So there's 4 screws on the top we want to take out, and there is 4 screws on the bottom. And the case will come apart very easily, and then you can put it back together. But make sure it's flat on your table like this. Don't take it out when it's like this. If it's flat, there's these buttons that we need to worry about. Sorry, I don't have my Phillips screwdriver here, otherwise this would be easier. All right, so notice I took the top off very slowly, and this piece is kind of loose in here because it's where the buttons are. You have to kind of like hold it with your hand like this. These things can fall through. Don't worry if they fall through, not a big deal. Just you're gonna have to put them like this and hold them together a little bit, and then when you want to put it back in, we'll put it back in. I'll show you, but I'm gonna put it aside here on the ground. So we took these 4 screws off. We'll do the same thing on the bottom side. 1, 2, because that's the only way we can get the sides where we need to get to the SD card. And by the way, let me show you, because now that the SD card's not in properly and it fell inside, if we try to power this up, oh, there it is, the SD card came out. But if I connect the power once again and turn it on, notice the fan spins, but none of the lights are turning on. The lights are not on. So that's a sign that the SD card is not in or seated correctly. So I'm going to shut it off. And now let's put the SD card back in. So here was the slot, the SD slot right here. And it kind of goes upside down, like the writing on the bottom side. So stick it in here and push it in. You'll hear a little click, which means it's in. And now turn it on. And notice my lights are working. So that means it's booting. And we're all in good shape. If for some reason it doesn't start again, don't worry, just turn it off. You might have to do this a few times. Sometimes these things don't make good contact. So just do it a couple of times. Make sure it clicked in. Sometimes pushing it down a little bit helps because that moves the contacts up. But now, there it is. It's working. So just make sure you boot it up this way and it's working. Then once it's, you're all set, all you want to do is put these sides back on. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to go ahead and put this one side on like that. Then the other side. And then we'll put these buttons in. You're going to have to hold it from the bottom so they don't fall out. Kind of like set them up and kind of move them around, make sure it's kind of seated, like I can feel it's seated. And then put the top on gently, making sure they line up with the buttons you just put on. You might have to just kind of like move it a little bit, and there it goes. And now it's seated correctly. And then go ahead and screw these in. And you'll just put in the other 4 screws, and then you'll put in these on the bottom, and you would be set. And then when you turn it on, you'll see the lights working. So I hope that helps. Give me a thumbs up or let me know if you have any questions or challenges.